Hi, and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics. My name is Andy Lusler, and I am a member of the Dole Institute Student Advisory Board, the official student group of the Institute. The Student Advisory Board is a bipartisan group whose members can access many great opportunities through their involvement with the Institute, including volunteering at programs and networking with our special guests. If you are a student and would like to join, please contact us by emailing dolesab@ku.edu or speaking with a student worker after the program. Tonight, we will be viewing The Other Side, a product of a trip around the country that Joe, the creator of the film, took with his dog Charlie. Joe had a hunch that how angry we are at each other politically is caused, at least in part, by a lack of understanding. To see if he was right, Joel sold his car, bought an old van, took a break from pursuing acting in Los Angeles, and traveled around the U.S. interviewing conservatives, trying to understand the other side. This documentary is a product of that journey. After the documentary and presentation, we will have some time for the audience to ask questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and a student worker with a microphone will come to you. Please stand if you are able and ask just one brief question. If you have difficulty hearing during the program, please alert one of our staff members or student volunteers who will assist you. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to please turn off your cell phones, and now please enjoy the 45-minute documentary, The Other Side.
The United States of America, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So if we're so united and indivisible, how come we're so angry at each other? Take a look. This is the average presidential approval rating by people from the president's party and from the opposition party. See how the lines grow farther and farther apart? So you're not imagining things. We are more divided today than we've been in a long time. But I have a story to tell. A story that I think is kind of inspiring, even though it's about politics. But let's back up a sec. My name's Joe. And this is my dog, Charlie. We live near the beach in Los Angeles, where I've been trying to break into the acting business. My career didn't really take off the way I wanted it to, but I did star in a few pretty good plays and I got onto TV a couple times. Now, I'm not that into politics, but I'm into it enough to get really mad at the other side, which for me is conservatives.
That is one of the altars of liberalism, is abortion. Killing innocent human beings disguised as women's health issue.
Marriage is between a man and a woman.
There are studies upon studies where a homosexual man is now heterosexual.
In order to function well in this country, we need the economy to function, and we're not going to do it, in my opinion, using the Democratic Party's approach.
Somebody's going to pay you to sit around, why would you not?
Socialism is great until you run out of other people's money.
See, I'm your typical bleeding heart liberal. I'm pro-choice, pro-welfare, pro-immigration, pro-gay marriage, pro-environment, pro-high taxes on the rich, and anti-war. I do typical liberal things. This is me trying to save the world, leading backpacking trips for troubled teens, and living in an old VW bus on the streets of Venice Beach. So yeah, conservatives would make me angry. But one day I had an idea. The Dalai Lama once said, when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new. I decided it was about time someone started listening to the other side, and I decided that someone would be me. So, I took a break from pursuing the acting thing here in Los Angeles. I sold my car and bought an old van. My buddy Bob helped me fix it up. My buddy Tommy made a logo. I slapped a couple on the van, threw Charlie in the passenger seat, and headed across the country to see what new things I could learn about conservatives. This is the story of that journey. Okay, we're going to do this issue style. In my interviews with conservatives, we covered just about every issue in American politics. I'm going to focus on 7 of them: the size of government, welfare, the environment, abortion, gay marriage, racism, and immigration. In all of the issues, but in these issues in particular, I found that conservatives aren't as bad as we say they are. There are legitimate concerns and valid values underneath their inflammatory talking points. Over the next hour or so, I'll tell you about those legitimate concerns and valid values and how I found them. Issue number 1, size of government.
Agreeing with it. In my days, Democrats are the people who wanted more government. Republicans were people who wanted less government.
The things that you see in the Republican Party that are more attractive to you than things that you see in the Democratic Party, what are those things?
Small government versus large government. And on the left, the Democratic side, the government needs to do everything.
Whether it's the Department of Energy, which really has nothing to do with energy, Department of Education, or EPA, their mandate and charters have gone off the rails, and they're these giant, unaccountable, just money-eating behemoths, and we pay for that.
I think everybody would agree. Government's out of control.
These are the talking points I was talking about. It was tough to keep from arguing like,
On the left, the Democratic side, the government needs to do everything.
not true, we don't want the government to do everything.
The Department of Energy, which really has nothing to do with energy.
Not true, the Department of Energy has at least a little something to do with energy.
I think everybody would agree. Government's out of control.
And not true, everyone wouldn't agree to that. But here's the thing. This is all hyperbole. They were exaggerating on purpose. And here's the other thing. We do that too.
Who's the victim?
Right.
Is it the woman? You know, we had a war on women. That's what the Democrats are running on right now. It's a war, not even a disagreement about something. It's a war on women, which is, come on. This is hyperbole. It's not a war. There are disagreements, yeah. We can try to negotiate those disagreements. But to demonize, and the right does this too, to demonize the other side, to make them into devils, isn't helpful from either perspective.
Yeah. Why do we use so much hyperbole? Best I can figure is that hyperbole helps us express how we're feeling. It feels better to say, I can't believe how racist Republicans are, than it feels to say, I disagree with Republicans on policy involving race. The problem is that though hyperbole might feel better, it's just going to give us an inaccurate picture of the other side and make us mad at them. I'm not interested in being mad at an inaccurate picture anymore, so I'll be looking at what's underneath the hyperbole.
The conservatism, like what about that appeals to most people in Kansas or just yourself?
Well, I think it's kind of, the value that, we can take care of ourselves.
And there you go. Underneath the government is out of control hyperbole are the values of individual liberty and self-sufficiency and a concern that big government threatens those values. Now, taken to the extreme, the small government mantra can be dangerous.
The Kansas legislature passed and our governor signed a massive income tax reduction. It has had a devastating effect on the state of Kansas. The projections are that we'll be bankrupt in the next 4 years if we don't do something about it.
But I get now the valid values and concerns that mantra is connected to. By the way, we'll get to some of the issues John is about to mention later, but I just wanted you to get a sense of how incredible this guy is.
I'm just trying to figure out if there's I'm liking your version of republicanism.
What's wrong with me, guys?
I'm like, you sound a lot like a Democrat.
I'm clearly a Republican. I believe in limited government, low taxes, strong national defense, but I also believe in taking care of less fortunate people in our communities. Women ought to have the right to decide for themselves whether they want abortion or not. 2 men or 2 women, if they want to get married, they'll have the right to do that as long as they are not breaking any laws or adversely impacting their neighbors. There's no reason not to.
And their talking points notwithstanding, Most of the conservatives I interviewed had rational, reasonable opinions about the size of government.
The whole concept of government is bad and they should get out of our lives. And
well, no, I don't mean to come across on that way. I'll give you an example with my mom. Being that she's on Medicare, she has some Medicare benefits. I really applaud Medicare. I applaud that program.
Because that's the other thing, like when you think, like, oh, we need to have government get out of things, I'm like, well, they're also providing the checks and balances to a lot of stuff financially, like Wall Street. There needs to be some very strict regulations on what they're doing, because they can, as we've seen, screw people completely.
I don't like a big government. I think it's a waste of money, honestly. But also on the other hand, and this is where, strangely enough, I think not enough government is a bad thing too.
Another legitimate value I found hidden under the big government hyperbole was a concern for fiscal responsibility.
And I feel like that's the vibe I get a lot when I'm talking with people, with liberals, progressives that are discussing economic policy with me. I feel like we're talking about free unicorns. And I'm trying to say, I'm sorry, unicorns are awesome. And they would be even better if they were free for everyone. But we can't do that.
This is why conservatives like pointing out the size of our national debt. It is, I think, their best argument in favor of low spending and small government.
And you know what? If we found a permanent solution to Social Security, Medicare, health care that kept our country solvent, you know, I don't have to make keep 100% of what I make to be happy. But if we could solve some of these problems so that my kids aren't saddled with trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, I'd be okay with that if there was some median in the middle. So part of the problem is you've got the extreme conservative that to get elected, he's got to appeal to his base. You've got the extreme liberal to get elected, he's got to appeal to his base. And so then when they go to Congress, they've got to stay firmly entrenched in their liberal or conservative kind of mindset. And so now we have a situation where nobody wants to cooperate with each other, and there are some very sensible, easy solutions can be brought about if they simply had some median in the middle. And we're not seeing it.
Now, I don't think that conservatives are blameless when it comes to big government spending.
I think on the Republican side tend to be more, I don't know, that I hate to say it, but at least they talk about being fiscally responsible.
I often think, like, you know, the small government, you know, of the Republic, you know, the current mantra of small government and fiscal responsibility, when it comes to defense, doesn't really apply. It's like, we're going to spend...
I think that's true, that the Republicans tend to be more defense-oriented.
But just because conservatives may not be entirely consistent in their small government mantra doesn't mean they don't have a point. They do, which was surprising. Issue number 2, welfare.
The thing is, you know, you're rewarded for hard work, and I just, you know, there's a lot of, seems like everybody wants their handout, and nobody wants to work anymore.
Look at the poverty program. LBJ came out with Great Society in 1965. Is poverty going away? No.
After $22 trillion, we have the same amount of poor people in this country proportionally to our population as we did back in 1965.
And you have to really be careful about unintended consequences of your actions, because that happens frequently. And you can do more harm than good. Even though your intentions are all great, you can end up doing some real harm if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And that's especially true in the social welfare area.
Now, although some conservatives wanted no public assistance for the poor,
I'm not against a safety net. I'm just against a...
I'm against a safety net.
You're against safety net? Okay, that's different. That's a little bit more of an extreme. I'm not on that far.
most conservatives wanted a government safety net. They just had a problem with how welfare does that.
The biggest part of me being conservative is that I don't believe that people should be given something. And I think you're doing them an injustice by doing it. You're never going to move them ahead by giving them something. If anybody thinks that's the way to go, I just can't believe they're thinking straight.
I would love to win one of those mega millions or power where I got $300 million, and I would start charities left and right. But I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't just give people money.
Now, growing up, welfare was the issue that really separated us from conservatives. The message I got was that Republicans are bad because they don't care about the poor, and racist because so many of the poor are African American. But on my trip, I met conservatives who were African American themselves, which kind of poked some holes in that theory.
Unlike most conservatives, I'd say, I grew up poor. We were always on welfare or some sort of public assistance. I'll never forget these two girls on the bus talking about how they wanted a bigger place to live. It wasn't about, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get out of the projects, I'm going to get my own apartment. It was, I got to get pregnant, and this time I hope I have a girl, because a girl and a boy can't share a room, and I'll get an extra bedroom.
That's kind of what makes me more conservative, because a lot of the rhetoric I sometimes hear coming from the more liberal side, the policies are not about empowering people, but by taking care of people so much that it takes some of their power away. And that worries me. And I wonder if that's part of what's happened in Black America in the last 30 years, where things have gone backwards.
I have a thought. Back in the 60s, this guy Nevitt Sanford came up with a theory that for us humans to develop to our full potential, we need the right balance of challenge and support. Too much challenge and we fail, too much support and there's no incentive to learn and grow. It occurred to me while talking to Binta that conservatives emphasize the challenge part of that equation, talking about hard work and sacrifice, while liberals emphasize the support part, talking about government programs that help poor people. That's why conservatives like Ben Carson so much.
Dr. Ben Carson.
Ben Carson.
Dr. Ben Carson.
His pulling himself up by his bootstrap story is proof to them that challenge is the more important value. Now, I don't know that they're right. I'm with Sanford and his theory that we need the right balance of the two. But before this trip, challenge wasn't a value I even considered in our welfare programs. What's more, I get the value of challenge. My whole life is about challenge. This is me teaching middle school, playing minor league pro soccer, running marathons, doing triathlons. Heck, look at what I'm doing. I'm a liberal driving around the country talking politics with conservatives. Yeah, it's safe to say challenge is a pretty important value in my life. Now, we can argue about how our welfare programs are managing that challenge and support balance, but I think we need to stop it with the conservatives hate the poor rhetoric. Maybe some conservatives do hate the poor, but none of the ones I met did. Not even Joe, who didn't want a government safety net. He's just a strict libertarian.
Something you just said sparked something to me. I'm really curious what you think of Edward Snowden.
I love him. Oh, you love him? He's my hero. Okay. Seriously? No, dead serious.
Joe obviously differs with most of his conservatives on this.
Edward Snowden is a weaselly little bastard who should be hung, actually after he's shot.
I think Snowden's a traitor. I have absolutely zero respect for what he did. See, this is kind of a weird disconnect, because in one sense, I believe the government's shitty. I believe the government is bad at a lot of things and can't be trusted almost to a sense, where you believe that the opposite of that to a degree, but in this situation I'm trusting the government and you're not.
Yeah, we're switching sides a little bit. Aren't we?
Yeah.
In fact, there were quite a few ways in which he was a little different from most conservatives.
Another thing that you would probably agree with me on, that Riley is probably going to like choke me to death. The torture report, I'm 100% against torture in every situation.
I'm against torture. Said I do have moral things, but what is torture? Like that's the whole point. Now, what is it? What would you say torture?
The Ronald Reagan administration. Ronald Reagan, the god of conservatives.
I'm not saying he didn't have flaws.
Okay, but like his administration defined waterboarding as torture. They prosecuted people over it.
Okay, yeah.
And that is the smallest thing we did.
You know, and I would say, like, does it scare people? Yeah, there was 4 people who were waterboarded. Okay, and
I think it was a lot.
I don't know. The waterboard,
rectal feeding, it was bad. Just personally, Riley might choke me again, but I'm very pro legalization of drugs.
By the way, people always ask me how I met the conservatives I interviewed. Sometimes I just looked for them wherever I was, man on the street style. That's how I met Riley and Joe.
All right, we're at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, and we found out that the college Republicans are meeting at 5 o'clock. It's about 4:40, so we're going to go see if we can say what's up, see if people want to talk to us.
And here's me in Beaufort, South Carolina.
Howdy. Hello. Hey, sorry to interrupt. So, just did my first man on the street interview with a couple. I thought it was a good conversation, you know. But they didn't sign the release form at the end, which is what we're dealing with right now. Kind of dealing with feeling like, I don't know, it's hard not to take that personally, you know, like they don't trust me or... I mean, I understand, you know, you see The Daily Show or you see lots of shows that use footage to make fun of people, so I get it, but, you know, it was kind of sad. Like, we had a couple moments, they were Christians, and they felt like, the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction. They feel like they can't talk as much. And I've never had much respect for that point of view, you know, like the war on Christmas or, you know, persecuted Christians. And, you know, people on the left, we don't give that argument any credence. Like, oh, there's a war on, you know, all of you who are in power. Like, oh, you have to, you know, we have to take down the 10 Commandments from the courthouse. But talking to them, it was, you know, it's talking to real people with real feelings. So there's that moment where I get, like, hey man, you know, I get you. I see what you're dealing with, and I feel it, and I get it. Boom, boom, boom. And then there's no signature of the release. So it's just kind of a bummer.
But mostly I met them through friends and family. Almost everyone I know had a conservative friend or family member somewhere in the U.S. for me to talk to. Sometimes they were my friend or family member, like Dave and Binta from high school, or my Uncle George and my cousin Sean. That was actually a really cool part of the trip, catching up with old friends and family.
So just pulled into Birmingham, Alabama, and we're gonna go over to my high school girlfriend Mimi's parents' place. I'm like nervous, you know, like I'm 16 again, and I'm trying to be worthy of Mimi's affections.
Come on in. How are you? Good. Come on. Come here. Come here. You little wire-haired thing. Come here. Hey. I'm armed, you know. Well, come on in. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Mimi's parents are some of the most kind, fun, and generous people I know. but their conservatism had always cast a bit of a shadow over my relationship with them. With my judgments about conservatives slowly disappearing, so did that shadow, and I was able to just enjoy them as the phenomenal people they are.
Great to see you. Thank you so much. Love you too.
Smith and Wesson.
It was so fun. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Issue number 3, the environment. It's common among us liberals to casually claim that conservatives hate the environment. But that's not true. What they don't like is the EPA.
EPA is writing a lot of regulations that have nothing to do really with preserving ecosystems. What it really is doing is creating an environment where government controls all the property.
We have the cleanest air in the world right now as an industrialized nation. Why isn't the EPA smaller than it used to be?
Well, but couldn't you also say that the reason that we have the cleanest air in the world is because of the EPA?
Right, but it's been clean for quite a few decades. When you have the EPA decide that this puddle is a wetland, then you get into rules like you had in Maryland where rain is taxed.
It was tough to hear conservatives criticizing the EPA because I like the EPA and I think it does a lot of good. It was hard to keep from arguing, and with Al and Renee, I failed.
The government was originally put together to defend the country. That was really it. It was not meant for all of the things it does now.
Regulation, branches of EPA, just, I mean, to open, yeah, get it back on me. To open a business, I could not believe the layers of bureaucracy and how much money we had to spend on EPA and first, second phases, third phases. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. And you want to just open a business, you can't. I mean, you can, but you have to hire a lawyer. You have to hire an attorney. You have to have, accountants. You have, it's just you have to. Yeah, this is all the fun EPA crap
Water
we had
reports.
to go through. Water reports. And then to refinance, you have to have an updated water report. And they get a great 6 weeks to 8 weeks to update their one little letter. Why? Why does it take so long? I mean, that's just time is money to us. It is just a joke.
But don't you think like our water should be protected?
No, I don't
That's
think
a false narrative.
I think we should have dirty water.
No.
We should just crap in our water and forget.
Here's the
really?
No. But
what a stupid question. That seems like, and see, that's the frustration.
Well, okay, so but that's what it sounds like when you say.
It does sound like this.
When you say, right, like the EPA is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You see how that you're making a generalization now. The only choice I have is to say you must want to take a dump in our water.
Yes.
Because you made this claim. Now I am if you want to start a business, I want the water to be protected. I want the process to make sense for you.
Absolutely.
I want your correspondences to be returned in a timely manner. I want all of those things. But if you take the stance like the EPA is ridiculous, all you're going to get from me is pushback.
That's true. Good point.
No, you fell into a talking point narrative only.
Yeah.
You were almost there.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Well, you were almost there.
That actually worked out pretty well. Other times I failed to keep from arguing were a little more contentious.
We want a permanent military bases. So
we don't.
Cheap oil.
Wrong. We never have. Kuwait. Tell me what happened in Kuwait in '91 or '92. Take me through
Why
it.
do we stop? We always stop talking about Iraq.
No,
it
was supposedly a war over oil, and we went in there and we gave blood and treasure, and we pulled out. We didn't commandeer any oil fields. And we would have done.
Do you understand that we're going to have a hand in setting up a government that's going to give us?
It is nation building. We're trying to build a democracy, and I'll argue all day that it doesn't work very well. No, we did. Did you know they had elections and thumbprints?
No, I understand.
That's a democracy.
Well, don't mock me.
No.
Talk to me a little bit about Obamacare and the.
I've seen more patients without insurance since Obama came into office than I have ever seen in my professional career.
This is a positive that I've heard about the Obamacare, is that people who couldn't get healthcare before now are able to.
Which is awesome, and then they can't afford it. So it's great. Great. So we've created a system.
No, they can afford it.
No, they can't because their deductible is $10,000 off the mark. So they actually can't.
I'm talking to people about the people that can.
So who can afford it? I'm curious. So I will tell you, we will not argue about this at all. This will get turned off. I'm not going to argue about this.
Okay.
Never said 0 people weren't helped.
Gotcha.
Never. What I have said is that I have seen more people hurt by it than I have seen helped.
Okay, well then I misunderstood.
Yeah, way more people hurt by it than helped.
Gotcha.
But back to the environment. When I interviewed Mike, a mining engineer in Reno, it was my turn to take responsibility for a talking point, namely, mining is bad.
So you haven't had much exposure to mining, clearly.
Almost none. Yeah.
Well, look around, and you look around and name something that any product in this house, and I'll tell you how mining got that product to this place.
Not the lamp.
Well, the lamp has got brass, which is tin and copper, comes out of a mine. The filament is tungsten, comes out of a mine. The glass comes out of a mine. It's sand that's been heated and melted. The wire inside of here is steel, comes out of a mine.
Yeah, I think when we think, like, especially for progressive liberal Democrats, we think of the environment. Whenever we hear the word mining, we instantly think of chemicals getting into our river supply or something.
Sure, absolutely.
That's the picture that immediately comes to mind.
Sure, that's what the media publishes. Who cares about a mine that's working and taking care of things? The goodwill story doesn't sell copy.
Look, should we make sure mines are taking care of the environment? Of course. But shouldn't we at least acknowledge the good they do, how they provide us with the raw materials for just about everything, and how we wouldn't be able to survive without them? It seems to me that in politics, we're never allowed to acknowledge this complexity. You just have to choose. If you're conservative, you only talk about the good of industry and capitalism, and if you're liberal, you only talk about how industry is destroying the environment. By the way, I really like talking to Mike and getting to know him and his neighbors.
Hey, it was a fascinating conversation and amazing guy, really amazing. A phenomenal conversation. Then I met some of his neighbors. He gave me tomatoes from his garden, a zucchini, apples from his apple tree, strawberries from a strawberry patch that he has. His neighbor came over and I got like 1.5 pounds of honey. Charlie got jerky. Mike's wife gave me 3 bags of dog treats for Charlie. It was just, and it was like a really heartwarming, awesome community. And I'm leaving a little bit, I don't know, I'm like sad right now. And I don't know if I'm like just, like I just spent, 4 or 5 days with my sister and her family, and then I just met this guy and his sort of neighborhood, and I have a feeling like a big part of this trip is going to be pretty lonely. So yeah. Yep.
That night, I had my first Walmart camping experience. Most Walmarts let RVs camp in their parking lots overnight, and I saved a lot of money doing that on my trip. Charlie has a seizure. He gets them every so often, and the vet says they're not dangerous, but they're still pretty scary. I wake up the next morning not in the highest of spirits. But we hit the road and head towards Utah. Charlie recovers on my lap. Pretty soon, he's back to normal. Now, no conversation about the environment is complete without discussing climate change.
And I'm certainly not a climatologist. I'm not a scientist. But I do know that skepticism is healthy for science, except when it comes to climate change.
Okay, so after talking to Joe, I looked at the data again, and it still seems pretty clear that climate change is real and caused by human activity. But I think I understand the conservative skepticism about it. First, I think there's a boy who cried wolf effect happening here. How we liberals sound when we talk about climate change, this is how we always sound to conservatives.
What's the biggest problem with people on the left, like liberals and progressives?
They scream about everything. You know, everything. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing right in this country according to them. But it's true, they do. They're looking for any cause. I mean, my God.
Second, the policy prescriptions for fighting climate change are all liberal policy prescriptions. Government regulations, more funding for the EPA. So though I think we're right about climate change, I get why conservatives might be skeptical. Now, regardless of our disagreement over climate change, I really liked Joe. Plus, he took me hunting, which is something I really wanted to do, because I'd never been before and because it seemed like such a conservative thing to do.
You know how much I like side-by-sides.
What's a side? What does that mean? Sorry.
Well, it means the barrels are side by side.
Oh, gotcha.
Now there's others that are over and unders where the barrels just one on top of the other.
Gotcha.
But this is side by side. It's old-timey. And then there's a 28 gauge shell. We are ready to go find some squirrels.
All right. There you go.
That's a fox squirrel. See the orange? They're big guys. So they're pretty squirrel.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them around here.
Can I hold him?
Oh, sure.
How much does he weigh?
Oh, nice. Pound and a half, maybe.
Pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm. Carried a lot of Appalachian people through the winter, back in the day. People have kind of gotten away from eating squirrel. I don't know why. It's not as certainly glamorous as big game hunting or anything like that. It's more, I guess I enjoy it because I feel, like I mentioned earlier, that I know where my food's coming from. Can't get more free range than, this guy right here. As far as the ethics of hunting go, if someone's a strict vegan, I have no problem with them criticizing my way of life, But if someone goes to Giant Eagle and gets a cellophane wrap tray of chicken and brings it back and then criticizes me for killing squirrels, there's a disconnect there.
Every conservative I interviewed who hunted said the same thing, that they only kill things that they eat.
I kept a little bit of it. I'll never shoot another bear because honestly it tasted horrible and I like to eat everything that I shoot. So.
Afterwards, Joe let me do some shooting.
The slide steel. Okay, now with those 3 fingers, go ahead and lever the...
Oh, I forgot to, yeah.
Just go ahead and run the lever down. Okay, and close it. You're ready to go.
Okay. Turns out I was pretty good.
Consistently, that's good. That's real good shooting.
Oh, thanks.
Sure. Let's shoot the pistol. I think you'll have fun.
All right, cool.
Oh, it's the bullseye.
All right on.
And I liked it a little more than I wanted to.
They're natural.
Sweet.
Want to shoot any more?
I'm good. Yeah, that was... Maybe can I do with a rifle one more time?
Yeah, sure. Beautiful.
Issue number 6, racism. Why is this a political issue? Because conservatives don't think it's much of a problem anymore, and we do.
I was in the Buffalo Battalion. They were called the Black Buffaloes. It was an all-black unit, and I was like one of
At the time, I was one of like 3 white guys in the platoon. They treated me great. They were so nice to me. And I couldn't ask for a better bunch of guys. I don't think the race issue in this country is as bad as people make it out to be, at all whatsoever.
He's got a bloody nose.
Yeah, these guys are fighting over here. Damn it, here I am talking about it as a white and a black guy fighting. Son of a bitch.
This is where I nail him, right? Did you see the fight behind you? Hear the white guy drop the N-word? But the truth is, that fight doesn't prove we're right that racism is still a big problem any more than Dave's positive experience in the Army proves that it isn't. Racism, like most things, is a complex issue. Some things have gotten better, other things seem to have gotten a lot worse. Passing through South Carolina, I heard the Klan was having a rally to protest the removal of the Confederate battle flag from the grounds of the state capitol, so I hightailed it to Columbia. I wasn't able to interview anyone in the Klan, but I did meet this pretty level-headed kid named Brent, who wasn't in the Klan, but who wanted to show his support for the flag. I caught up with him later near his home in the hills of Tennessee.
Were you worried that you would be associated with the Klan being there?
Yeah, kind of. But that's why we stood off by ourselves. And also, that's how we started out. You know, most people coming and talking to us is we flat out told them right then we're not there because we're with the Klan or that we support them. A lot of people don't carry this flag or fly it because we're racist. It's just a symbol of being proud of being from the South. And that's all it is, to me anyway. Having our guns, being able to go kill our own food, fish, you know, just stuff like that. Yeah, Charlie Daniels fan. I love him.
The only thing I know is Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. He's got like in America, that song talks about how America has to stand up, be one again instead of dividing over silly things, getting mad over silly things like gay marriage. I can't believe that divided people the way that it did. To me, that's their business, you know. If they're gay and they want to get married, it doesn't affect me any. And I can't believe that people can't respect you're liberal. That's cool. I respect that. I'm talking to you right now. I don't understand why people can't be like that.
The problem is the parties like to divide. They like to lead us to believe that we have only 2 choices. They want us to believe we can either have a secure border or we can have a humane immigration policy. They want us to believe we can either have high quality or affordable health care. They want us to believe that we can either have schools that work or teachers' unions. But the reality is there's ways to bring together the needs of both sides in a policy prescription that actually moves our country forward, but that's not how you win elections. You don't win elections by talking about the ways we move forward. You win elections by dividing people.
Greg is an independent who ran for Pat Roberts' Senate seat in Kansas. It was close, but he lost, which is a shame. It would have been nice to see what he might have been able to accomplish in Washington. So, what did I get out of all this? In a word or two, nuance and complexity. Conservatives, and the issues themselves, are more complex and nuanced than I ever thought they were. Conservatives even make good points from time to time. They make me angry a lot of the time, but that's just their hyperbole and talking points talking. Underneath the rhetoric, there are good people, honest values, and valid concerns. I didn't become a conservative on my trip, but I became a new kind of liberal. Kind of liberal that can see not just my side's virtues and the other side's flaws, but the other side's virtues and my side's flaws. It gives me hope. Because if the other side isn't nuts, then we can talk to them. And that is good news.
You were able to ask me questions and you let me answer.
I really enjoy I think
I think this is a really good idea.
I know what Al's gonna say about you when you leave. He's gonna say, "No, that's a Democrat I like."
Oh, there's a bunch of them out there, though.
Any final things you want to say? Or it doesn't have to be, but the opportunity's there.
I like you. I like you a lot. I want to shake your hand, and I wish you the best on this.
Thank you so much.
Because I think this documentary, by some miracle, turned out to be a big hit. It would do our culture good.
You're brave. I think you're brave because I think you could get, I mean, you're just getting into a hornet's nest by saying, I'm going to go over here. And I just think that's incredible. I think it's incredible you're doing it. I think that's the voice that we need to start having.
That was the first person we found, and we got a nice reception. Thumbs up.
Oh, yeah?
Very nice.
They will vote for us.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Fellow Republicans.
Nice. I mean, boo.
The United States of America, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So if we're so united and indivisible, how come we're so angry at each other? Take a look. This is the average presidential approval rating by people from the president's party and from the opposition party. See how the lines grow farther and farther apart? So you're not imagining things. We are more divided today than we've been in a long time. But I have a story to tell. A story that I think is kind of inspiring, even though it's about politics. But let's back up a sec. My name's Joe. And this is my dog, Charlie. We live near the beach in Los Angeles.
Great. Well, good evening and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics and tonight's program, The Other Side. I am Barbara Bellard. I'm the Associate Director of the Dole Institute of Politics. Tonight's interview will be conducted by Dole Institute Director Bill Lacey. Our guest tonight has been a teacher, a vice principal, a minor league professional soccer player, social worker, and most recently, an actor in Los Angeles. He traveled through 35 states over the course of 5 months and conducted 82 interviews with conservative Americans to create his documentary, The Other Side, A Liberal Democrat Explores Conservative America. We noticed the documentary last fall and felt it should be seen and discussed at the Dole Institute. We reached out to our guest and he agreed to join us. I actually found his documentary to be very educational. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joe McGovern.
Joe, let's start with, I think, a clarification that we need to make. This was not the full documentary. This was a slightly edited version that you did for us to show tonight, so it wouldn't take the full length.
For sure. Yeah. The full length. If you notice, I said I was going to talk about 7 issues, and then all of a sudden we skipped to number 6. So that was, I made a shorter version so that we could have plenty of time to discuss and answer questions and talk about it. But the full version is available on the website. It's theothersidedocumentary.com. So if you want to watch the missing issues, abortion, gay marriage, then you can watch it on the website.
Okay, terrific. We always like to get to know our guests a little bit better. So let's go a little bit deeper than your biography. And
that's exciting.
Tell us about your upbringing, your education, and kind of how you finally wound up trying to make it as an actor in L.A.
Cool. Okay. So I was born in Arlington, Virginia, and my father was in the CIA for 27 years. He was a Soviet expert. And we lived in Germany for 3 years. He was training the Germans on Soviet surveillance techniques. So, so interesting upbringing with my dad as a spook. From Arlington, I went to college at William & Mary for 4 years. Graduated with a degree in history. Then I spent a year in the Dominican Republic trying to save the world. If you notice, around 1996, everything got better. That was because I saved everything, and now everything's fine.
That's funny. I thought it was because Bob Dole was a Republican nominee for president in 96. So
maybe a combination of the two things.
Okay.
Then I came back, and I had always felt like I might be a teacher. So I started teaching. I taught for 2 years, and then I knew I'd kick myself if I didn't try. I always wanted to be a professional soccer player, especially growing up in Germany. So I played a season of semi-pro soccer in Virginia, and then I got a little tired of the suburbs, and I just packed up my truck and moved out to San Diego. I was in San Diego for 4 years, and in San Diego, my first job, I was pulling a rickshaw at the San Diego Zoo. And then I did social work, and then I taught middle school for 4 years, the last 2 of which I was the vice principal, the boys and girls soccer coach, the academic decathlon coach, the student council moderator. Then I wanted to try something new, so I went to Utah and I led backpacking trips for troubled teens in the wilderness there. And then I came back to Los Angeles, oddly enough, because I missed the math. Any math dorks in the house? Just me, okay. So I came back, I was a math teacher in Los Angeles, and then all my friends, not all my friends, but some of my friends in Los Angeles turned out to be actors. I had always acted a little bit when I was a kid, and I figured I'd give that one a try. So I quit teaching, I started tutoring math to support myself while I was acting. And then I had this idea to do this documentary, and I spent 2 years making the documentary, and there you go, the life story.
This was a huge commitment that you made. Where did the idea come from, and what drove you to do this?
Yeah, so the idea came from two things. The first thing, I just really like a challenge. You can see by my resume that I tend to have lots of different interests, and I like challenging myself. I like learning new things about who I am, about life, about the human condition. So the prospect of traveling around the country, talking to conservatives, and seeing, this is the important thing, seeing if I could keep myself from arguing, see if I could do something more productive with my anger than fighting back. If I could transform that anger into curiosity. And so that was the first motivation behind doing the film, was just the challenge aspect of it sounded like it would be a lot of fun. And then the second thing was that I noticed that in, there's a current, a friend of mine said that conservatives like their derision of the other side with a dose of anger, and liberals like their derision of the other side with a dose of comedy. So if you think about, the popular conservatives, Rush and Hannity, there's some anger coming from them. And you think about the popular liberals, Samantha Bee, Jon Stewart, John Oliver, it's always, Bill Maher, it's always with comedy. So it's an interesting, that was an interesting discussion. So when I started to see inside of some of my favorites, some of my liberal heroes, that in order to do comedy, you have to exaggerate. You have to. It takes hyperbole. That's where lots of comedy comes from. And I noticed that was happening with some of my heroes. That spring, it was the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. I just started noticing him committing some of the sins that he accused the other side of, and I had a hunch that I didn't have an accurate picture of what conservatives are like, and ever the adventure, I figured I'd go find out for myself what they were like. So,
how did you choose the issues that you focused on?
I didn't. Well, for the film, the reason I chose those 7 is because those 7 issues were the ones that I had the biggest epiphany in, or I learned something new. So they sort of chose themselves. But in my interview, people would always say, like, "What do you ask?" And I don't ask anything. I just say, "Let's talk. What's important to you?" And then I let them lead the conversation, and it invariably goes to the issues that are important to them. And then I ask follow-up. I just keep asking questions until I get something, until I learn something, until I see something that I never saw before. A good example is I was interviewing one of my interviewees, and they said that Obama was the worst president ever, which to me sounds nuts. How could you even think that? But I just, again, anger is what was the first impulse, but I turned it into curiosity. Okay, so why do you feel that way? Well, he's weak. Okay, why do you feel that he's weak? Well, Syria. Okay, what happened in Syria? Well, he said if Assad uses chemical weapons that weren't going in, Assad used chemical weapons and he didn't go in, that makes us weak. So now I disagree with the premise that Assad used chemical weapons. I'm not sure that that's definitive. But regardless of the truth, if I were to agree with his premise that Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, then I would have to agree that that was a weak move by Obama to threaten to go in if he used chemical weapons. In other words, I disagree with his premise, but all of the connections are logical until the last one, until he's the worst president ever. That seemed to me to be hyperbolic. But just seeing that there was logic in the argument, and it wasn't that he was nuts, it was that we just disagreed about the premise, not the logic, not the rationality behind his rhetoric.
You talked about, you just referenced hyperbole, you talked about it in the film. Talk a little bit more. Let's go into this in a little more depth, the effect of hyperbole on political discussion.
Yeah, so let's try a little premise to conclusion. Let's try some logic here. So if the goal of government is to address issues, is to solve problems, then we would want, this will be the first leap I make, then we would want the government to have a very clear, specific, accurate picture of reality in order to address, to have the power to address those issues. Well, hyperbole instantly takes away that accuracy. Hyperbole, by its definition, is exaggeration. So that's how hyperbole damages what I think good governance. Hyperbole is excellent for good politics. It's just really bad for good governance. And that I learned from one of my interviewees who is here, John Vrottel. John, do you want to stand up? So, I don't know if you guys know John, but so I just, in most of my interviews, I would discover like a little nugget here, a little morsel here. I'd find something out, I have an epiphany. John's was just like straight an hour and a half of epiphany. And one of the things that John said was that, the behaviors, this is like blew my mind. The behaviors that make good politicians, that make for good politics, are not the behaviors that make for good governance.
I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm wondering, does hyperbole has it been substituted in political discussion for the notion that there can be common facts that we start on?
I think that I think we just need to be precise and specific. And when we use the word facts, I think frequently we're not talking about facts, we're talking about opinions. When you hear Fox News or you hear MSNBC, most of what they say isn't facts. Most of what they say is opinions. So the opinions are different, but the facts are the same. We can agree on, we don't, but we could agree on facts. Another friend of mine, when I was talking to him about the film, he said, what we really need is one place, or multiple places, doesn't have to be one place, where conservatives and liberals can go and get actual facts. And if there's disagreement about facts, like did Russia meddle in the election, if there's disagreement, can this news source or whatever it is put in the disagreements in there for us? Okay, here's the report from the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. The evidence is this channel called RT. That's this and this, and then we can. Those are the facts. What's in the report is the facts. Then we can form our opinions about it. But I find that the biggest impediment to us having common facts is our misuse of the word facts. I think far too often we're sort of lazy in the way we speak. And I was a math teacher for 8 years. I've been tutoring it for the last 12. So specificity and precision is very important to me. So that's what I have to bring to the conversation. That's what I could add to the conversation. I think looking out at you all, I would probably guess that most of you know more about politics than I do. You probably know more about the bills that are being passed. You probably are more educated than I am around politics. But what I can bring that's special, what I can bring to the conversation that might be unique, is an adherence to specificity and precision, and that might be the exact thing that we need right now.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed in the film is you really wanted to go deeper than the talking points, deeper than the hyperbole to get the personal values. Why did you think that was so important?
Because I think it's important the picture that we have of each other. So if I am talking to a conservative and I think they're nuts, there's zero possibility for a productive conversation with them. If I'm talking to a conservative who I think is rational, who is intelligent, who comes to their opinions thoughtfully and deliberately, now there's a conversation that's possible. I'm forgetting what your question is. What was your question?
Personal values.
Personal values. So the importance, to discover those personal values underneath the talking points, that's what will take a conservative who sounds nuts to a conservative who's rational, a person that I can have a conversation with. the important piece in this is that they have zero responsibility in this. I made it my responsibility to have these conversations be productive. They could say whatever they want. They could spout hyperbole, talking points, whatever. I put the 100% of the responsibility on myself to make the conversation productive. And I think that might be the only way to actually ensure that you have productive conversations. I think there's the common understanding of having conversations with people on the other side is sort of 50-50 responsibility. Like, all right, let's set some ground rules. We won't call each other names. We'll be specific. And then the minute one of you breaks that rule, the whole thing falls apart. But with the conversations that I'm advocating, if each of us goes into a conversation saying, I am going to resist using hyperbole, and when they use hyperbole, I'm going to look and see if I can find the underlying value, like what legitimate concern are they pointing to, then you're guaranteed to have a productive conversation in every conversation that you have with someone from the other side. Sometimes it takes a while. That was a deal I made. I was never going to finish. I was never going to stop an interview until I made something productive happen. So some of my interviews were like 2.5 hours long. But in every single conversation, there was at least one thing that I learned new about myself, or learned new about them, or learned new about conservatism, or learned new about the way the world works.
From doing this film, Joe, what did you learn about the causes of polarization?
Bad coping skills. Like, we don't have the right to not be offended. No one has the right to be immune from being offended. We have a choice of how we respond to being offended. We can fight back, sort of a ouch, you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. Or you can choose another, you can choose to be responsible for making something positive happen. I think that social media, we thought social media would bring us all together, like, oh, wow, now I can talk to someone in Madagascar, and it'll make the world smaller. But I think what it actually has done is you don't have to sit at the ball game, watching your kid's Little League game and talk to the conservative parent right next to you. You can go on to Facebook and find people who think exactly like you. You don't really have to interact with people who you disagree with anymore. So I think those are a few of the causes.
Mm-hmm. How would you say that the current political environment that we're in, that's very different from the one that you made the film in, has that changed your assessment, your basic assessment that you present in the film?
No, not at all. It's funny, I'm so trained, or I've so trained myself to listen to the legitimate underlying concern and even the most ridiculous sounding things that I hear the legitimate concerns even in things that Donald Trump says, for example. So there's nothing has changed. Things have gotten weirder, but the basic premise is 100% intact. If you want to have a productive conversation, if you want to see how your perspective may not be an accurate reflection of reality, then all you have to do is try to understand, try to look underneath the things that sound ridiculous. If you start a sentence with, "You're never going to believe," then you can be pretty sure you're about to engage in some hyperbolic speaking with your friend about the other side. Can you believe what they did is the beginning of something very hyperbolic, in my opinion.
Okay. It's very clear from talking to you and from watching the film that your opinion about certain things have changed, but has your broader perspective on politics and American life changed? Our own people changed during the process of making the film?
Say the difference one more time?
I'm saying basically it's obvious that your opinion of conservatives changed during the course of this, but did that change your perspective on politics in general, or kind of broader perspectives on life?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you guys know Greg Orman's. As I was watching it, there's a lot of Kansas in this. You guys, I had, you guys did, I should thank you for helping me make this documentary. I really like what Greg had to say. It's like, why do we have to choose between a secure border and a humane immigration policy? Like, why do I have to make the choice between two things that are good? Why can't I choose both of those? And why can't there be a politician who will say, you know what would be really fun is if someone was running for office, like a Democrat, and in their announcement speech, they said, hey, you know what? I'm going to run for office, and the first thing I want to say is, here's where the other side has a good point. And start off, I'd be like, let me campaign for you. Give me some leaflets. I'm going door to door. I'm talking to people about you because you're not afraid to, there's so much. If the other side makes a good point, you got to come in with your big sledgehammer of a bigger point and knock that point into submission. Why can't we just look at everything in the complexity and in the nuance that it is? So for sure, yeah, I've definitely changed. I still am on the left side of the spectrum, but I have a way more deeper appreciation for people on the right and the tenets that are underneath. Now, I still have, when I hear politicians on the right expressing those tenets in ways, it still makes me angry, and I still would like for them to change.
Makes some conservatives angry too. So.
For sure, 100%, exactly, yeah. And that's, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm ruined. I don't really have a home anymore. Like I can just hear the hyperbole everywhere. I hear my side. I wish we need to sit down and come to an understanding of what these words mean. What does racism mean? What does discrimination mean? What does diversity mean? I don't think we're using these words in the same manner even with the same definition. How could we even hope to have conversations with each other when the words themselves mean different things?
Okay, I have one last question to follow up on that, and then we're going to open it up to your Q&A. We'll do Q&A tonight the way we always do. If you have a question, raise your hand, get the attention of one of our student workers who has a microphone. They'll bring the microphone to you. Please ask a brief question, no statements. Please stick to that so we allow more people to ask questions. But Joe, my final question really is for everyone here. We all have strong views about politics and about policy. We don't agree on a lot of stuff, I'm sure, but I believe we all have the country's best interests at heart. What would you tell us tonight, and what would you tell us to go out and tell other people about how to fight through this phase of polarization and hatred that we're in right now?
Just watch out for hyperbole and keep, like I said in the film, it's like hyperbole is useful when you're really to express an emotion, I can't believe how racist Republicans are. It's got a lot of P's in it. It's good. Republicans, race. It's like you can almost feel the emotion coming out, right? So learn some new ways to deal with that, to deal with those types of emotion, and look to have conversations. Look to be curious. If you can somehow replace your anger with curiosity, then you'll go a long way towards diminishing the amount of polarization, I think, that you feel. And I think it's just, I keep thinking about John F. Kennedy's ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I feel like today's equivalent might be like, ask not how the other side is insane or contributing to the polarization, but ask how we're contributing to the polarization. It's never a good idea to point out the hyperbole in someone that you're talking to from the other side. That's not going to work. But if you watch your own, and if you listen for the legitimate concerns, the legitimate values underneath the hyperbole that's coming from the other side, then you'll come away from that conversation, like Greg Orman said, having moved our country forward.
Okay, very good. We're going to open it up to your Q&A. We've got about 15 minutes or so if folks have questions. So looking for hands up in the air. Did you get one?
Let me say one thing while we're waiting for the first question, and that is this. I keep forgetting to say this, but I'm not advocating that we stop fighting for what we believe in. It's important to fight for what you believe in, with whatever side you're on. It's important to fight for your principles and fight for your values. I just think that we need also some listening. I think it's like, you know the parable of the sun and the wind? Have you heard this? The sun and the wind are having a conversation about which one is more powerful, and a man walks by in a coat and says, all right, let's see which one of us can get the guy's coat off. So the wind goes first, and the wind blows and blows and blows, and the guy just wraps his coat around him tighter. The sun comes out and shines and just warms it up, and the guy takes his own coat off. So there's a lot of wind happening right now. I'm just advocating for a little bit of sun.
Very good. First question here.
I think that the basic idea of your project was to try to look at the division that has occurred. If we could figure out what it is that has caused that division, maybe we could kind of be like a doctor and figure out something that would cure it. In your project, did you form any ideas about why this division has occurred, what is causing it, what is making it worse, and what we might do to reverse it?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is evolutionary. You know, we're tribal by nature. In order to survive, we survive better in groups. It's sort of an evolutionary concept that when we're together in a group, then we're more likely to survive, using that word. But and in order to come together in a group, you have to form a line between your group and the other group. So part of it, we're fighting against, you know, I remember like Jon Stewart was interviewed by Charlie Rose recently, and he said, you know, we're fighting against millions of years of evolution. This American experiment, you know, it's just over 200 years old, is to a large degree trying to fight against our very natures to be tribal and define the other. So that's, I think, again, this is all my opinion. I'm not an anthropology expert by any stretch of the imagination, but in my travels, that's what I found. It's very us versus them. Who was Patrick? Who was the book about the teams? Patrick will be able to. Where's Patrick? He maybe left. So he wrote a book about how choosing your politics is more like being a fan of a sports team than it is about looking towards good governance. You know, I grew up in D.C., so I was a big Redskins fan, so I hate the Dallas Cowboys. And it's like, politics is a little bit more like that than it is anything to do with, you know, that was the thesis of the book anyway. So I think those are causes from my perspective and from my experience. Evolution and defining the other as a safety in numbers kind of thing.
Okay, we're going to go to the back to get our next question.
Do you think that the very nature of media, specifically social media, where you have 140 character tweets and 10-second videos posted on various platforms, has contributed to the proliferation of hyperboles and in turn polarization?
Yes. The question was the answer itself. Yeah, 100%. It's you know, when I was a kid, MTV first came out, and they had music videos back in the day. And if you watch an old MTV music video, there's a clip, and then a clip, and then a clip, and now it's clip, 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 clip. The attention span of your average American has narrowed or shortened. So in order to, the antidote that I'm suggesting to the polarization and partisanship is specificity and precision and nuance and complexity. And it takes conversations. It takes more than 140 characters to be able to investigate, to talk about, to weigh, and to really dive into those concepts. So, yes.
Do you think, if I can do a quick follow-up, Zach, sorry, but does the relative anonymity of social media also encourage people? I mean, sure, you may have your hashtag on your tweet, but I mean, it's not like it's your name. It's not like you're sitting with neighbors or friends or acquaintances when you use social media.
100%, yeah. The Joe, the guy who took me hunting, he I spent like 2 or 3 days. I got snowed in, and so it's the father of a friend of mine in LA. So I stayed with them for like 3 days, and we got along. We got along really well. He's really intuitive, perceptive guy. He said he was in the basement and he had an old copy of a newspaper, and he was like, "Why did I keep this? I don't know why I kept this copy." It turns out it was the day that his son was born. But he opened it up. He was just reading through it, and in the letters to the editor, you had to publish your name, your home address, and your phone number in order to publish a letter to the editor. And my liberal privacy thing was indignant, like, how dare you have to, and then he was like, no, you don't get it. It's like, you have to be civil if people are going to know where you live. That's going to shape how you phrase it. So I think you're 100% correct. And that might be a knock on my side, because I think we might be a little bit more about the privacy, or maybe not, I don't know. But 100%, I think you're spot on. If you had to publish your home address every time you commented on a, I don't know, a YouTube video, I think the comment section might be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question here.
Yeah, from a little different perspective, you did most of your interviews in homes. You went to their homes. And it strikes me that this is sort of the flip side of the anonymity, that to what extent do you think that you going to their homes, being in their space, contributed to the quality of the discourse that you got?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think it contributed largely. I really wanted to do that. And not just in terms of physical space, but in terms of ideas. I wanted our conversation, I didn't have a list of questions. I just wanted to talk about what was important to them. So not only was I coming into their house and their home, but also we were talking about what they wanted to talk about, what was important to them. I'm not really that into politics, I'm just into it enough so that I get really angry, So it wasn't really important to me that I, make sure I get a good sampling of how everyone feels on gun control or welfare or gay marriage. I was less interested in a sort of scientifically sound study, and more interested in what might happen if I played around with listening and dealing with my own experience on my own. Like, you can say things that make me angry, and you can count on me. I'm going to handle that. And then you can keep talking, and I'll find out what I can find out. You asked at one point, I think, whether this has larger application, or there was some piece of a question that was a little bit like that. I think what I'm advocating doesn't just stop at political conversations. I think this is a great way to have conversations with your spouse, with your boyfriend and girlfriend, with your friends, with your teachers. I think at one point while I was driving around the country, I had this thought. I was like, what if every argument that's ever happened in the history of civilization has happened because people weren't willing to listen to what the other person was communicating. Not what they were saying, but what they were communicating. You could say, I love you in a million different ways, and what you'll be communicating something different every time. So I think it's important. I don't even remember what your question was, but I think it's important that we listen to what we're communicating and not just what we're saying.
Okay, we have a question in the back, I believe, and then we have another one right up here. If somebody, oh, you got one, then we'll get up here.
You mentioned that you can hear the rationality in anyone's arguments or what they have to say.
Not quite. I can hear because sometimes they're very irrational. But
I can the values.
I can hear I like to call them legitimate concerns or legitimate values. Yeah.
So, could you give us a sampling of translating Trump for us?
Tell me what's the most absurd thing you've heard recently that you'd like me to translate, or anyone? The tapes? Oh, that he got recorded? All right.
You want me to stall?
No. Okay. So I think. So I don't know that he's produced any evidence to that degree, to that effect. But I think, and I'm not that educated when it comes to this stuff. But from my understanding, the NSA is collecting all of our everything all the time right now, which is one of the reasons that I'm a big Edward Snowden fan. But he wasn't able to prevent it, I don't think. So there's maybe a kernel. I mean, I don't think he's. To your point, I'm not sure Trump is making a comment on mass surveillance with that tweet. But I do think that there may have been some sort of. He may have been. Anytime someone's talking to a foreign official from another country, I heard that they monitor those. So there may be a kernel of truth to. Now, did he wiretap? Is Obama dressing up in Stasi uniforms and going into the Trump Tower to wiretap? Obviously not. But whether or not the NSA is listening in on conversations that he's having with leaders of foreign governments or officials in foreign governments, I find that to be a valid concern. Again, I don't until he produces any evidence, I can't really take it seriously. But there is a concern of that of being of illegal surveillance by our government. So I don't know if I give myself like a 70% on that one. That was kind of that wasn't so great, but
okay. We have a question over here.
Yeah.
Okay. I am thinking to times when I heard about congresses in decades past where members really got to know each other on a social basis and met as a community for different events, and how that affected their really beginning to understand each other's points better. And it seems to me that the kind of thing you're saying is we need ways to form those kinds of connections with each other. Not that we'll all agree, but that we understand each other's differences and maybe find paths to ways to do resolution of those differences. It takes time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's accurate. I think that if you think throughout human history, every time there's a technological advancement, it takes us a little while to catch up and figure out how to fulfill our human needs inside of the new reality. So before there were automobiles, you knew your neighbors, and you had a very close-knit social group. Now then when when the automobile was invented, then now you can go other places and that you lose that community. But then we find it in new ways. We find it in, I don't know, church groups or social other or here. So we catch up. The internet is fairly young in historic terms. So the internet has allowed for this sort of polarization. You don't have to talk to your neighbor anymore. You can just go find someone that thinks exactly like you do.
and it takes us a little while to catch up. But I really feel, I don't know if you guys feel this too, but I really feel like there is a yearning among Americans to come together and to start to understand each other and to stop being so angry at each other. I think that anger is sort of like a sugar rush. You know, you get a little juice out of getting angry. You know, it's kind of fun. You know, can you believe what he? You know, there's a little bit. You get a little spark, but it's like it's sugary. It's saccharine. You know, the meat and potatoes is the real human connection, and I think we're ready for that. I think we all know we're out of balance, and we're just sort of addicted to the outrage and the anger. So it's going to take some time. I don't think my film is for everybody. I'm just looking for some people who are willing to engage in this kind of dialogue, because it just doesn't really exist right now in the current landscape.
Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions right here.
This will be simple. I think you've got a good start going on getting answers or from your questioning. But I've wondered, are you considering going a little further with this, or have you thought about maybe the youth of our country, getting their thoughts, their ideas, because they see things a lot differently than probably more than the adults, and they may want the things that you want to hear, but they have no way of doing it at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that perhaps maybe this would be another venture for you, but take your fiance with you.
Yeah, no, we some of the most exciting conversations that I've had around the film is when I've shown it to various college classrooms in and around LA. Kids, they're hungry for this. At least in the classes that I showed, the questions afterwards were really astute. They were nuanced. And I had kids come up to me afterwards. This is what I'm dealing. This is how I have to talk to my parent. Like, the kids are like ahead of me. They're like, I know this. This is what I do with my parents when I talk to them, or this is what I do with my uncle and stuff. So yeah, that would be really exciting to do like a college tour or something like that. So the thought has crossed our minds and yeah, Claire would come with me.
Okay, we have a question over here.
John.
Which of your personal philosophies or values have changed, if any, as a result of producing this documentary?
You remember the challenge and support graph from that was really sort of groundbreaking for me. I'm naturally, I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, I led backpacking trips, I tried to save the world, Like, I'm like a caretaker, I like to take care of people. So I maybe go overboard on the support aspect. And I'm slowly learning that sometimes people have to deal with their own challenges. You can be there with them as they're going through it. But that, I think, is the thing that changed the most in me, because I tend to be so one-sided in that aspect. So understanding the value of allowing people to face their own challenges has been just a real interesting thing for me to chew on. Doesn't mean that we need to just slash welfare or just cut all the benefits that anyone is ever getting, but I think there's ripe ground for us to have a national conversation about how to achieve that balance. But your question was about me personally, and so in my life, as I'm teaching and as I'm tutoring math, I'm a little more, let's see how they handle it before I jump in. In my personal relationships, I'm newly engaged, so we have, I always want to take care of everything I want to solve all of her problems for her. I want to take care. I want to fix everything, and and you can't do that. Sometimes people have to face their own challenges, and that's sometimes really hard. But that's a really cool life lesson that is currently being taught to me.
Okay, we have a question back here.
Probably, I guess it must be 6-7 years ago, I was at a Tea Party protest in front of a TV station in Kansas City. And I'm very liberal. I was covering this for a volunteer radio station, and I thought, these people are nuts. And they were all signing
Tom,
this.
is that you? Is that Tom?
That's
Tom.
me. Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I didn't recognize you.
Good to see you.
You too.
But they were all signing this petition going around through the crowd, and a young lady brought it to me, and I thought, oh, this ought to be funny. And I read it, and it was point by point what they wanted journalism, free press, media to be. And I thought, we're not going to agree on any of this if we talk about politics, the Fox, MSNBC, New York Times, whatever. Everything in there I would have been proud to write, because it wasn't politics, it's what should journalism do, how should the public be informed, and it was beautiful. And just any more thoughts you have on the importance of media and journalism and how we get to those skeleton of it, apart from all the baloney that's around.
Yeah. Well, this is just the way I've got it sort of logicked out in my head, and that is this, that the media is a business. So media is selling something, and they're designed to make a profit. So they're going to sell what we buy. So if we're buying the clickbait, the tweets, the anger, the hyperbole, the exaggeration, when you share something on Facebook that you saw, like that really isn't accurate, that's filled with hyperbole and sort of empty rhetoric, then you're contributing to, you're telling the media what is going to sell. Basically, we're telling the media that we want like Doritos, Coke, and candy bars right now. And what I'm advocating is, if we can find those few instances where the media is actually giving nuanced, complex, well thought out analyses of current events, when we share those, we can signal to the media, like, this is what we want. We want these types of pieces. One thing that conservatives that I interviewed like to say was, people vote with their feet. If you don't like the policies in the state, then move to another state. So they were saying that's how some of how people feel about policies. So I think we vote with what we watch. We vote with what we share. And if we can start to support programs that give this kind of nuanced view and resist the urge to jump in on, look at how ridiculous this is. That's just how I have it, how we can do something to affect it. They're going to keep selling what we're buying. And if we stop buying the shallow stuff, then they'll start serving up something more meaty.
Do you have any other questions? Last chance. Okay, everyone, join me in thanking Joe McGovern for a great program tonight. Joe, what is your website? So if folks want to go to your website and see the full documentary, or maybe even send some cash along in support?
For sure. So it's theothersidedocumentary.com.
Okay, thank you all for coming out. Hope to see you next Wednesday night when the President and CEO of the Dallas region of the Federal Reserve Board, Rob Kaplan, who's a KU grad, is with us doing the Dole lecture this spring. So thank you all for coming out.